Well, has anybody gone camping or hiking lately?
Not me. Just walking the dog.
There's Dick. Hi, Dick.
Hi, Susan. I've gone camping a couple of times with my daughter and slept in a tent even. Been hiking very often on weekends, last to Greer Island in Lake Worth, which is a lot of fun. I think the Sierra Club went there sometime in the last year or so. There's maybe 10 miles of trails there, maybe more. And at Eagle Mountain Lake, there's about 11 miles of trails, and they're really nice. So it's less than an hour over there. It's kind of on the northwest part of Fort Worth.
I went hiking today at Lake Pueblo State Park. I live in Colorado now.
Oh, beautiful.
Nice.
Which one?
Yeah. It was a beautiful day, highs in the 60s.
Beautiful.
Wow.
You had it warmer than we did.
Wow.
Love Colorado.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it here. I'm glad I made the move.
Imagine, where do you live?
Pueblo?
Oh, okay. Okay. That's near Four Corners, right?
No, it's just south of Colorado Springs.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And the state park, well, it's 7 miles from my house. And there's a couple of trailheads there. And there's like some flat area and some canyons. And in one area, you can go down some of the canyons and then back up another one. And the one I did today was on the flat for the most part.
Oh,
It wasn't that exciting of a trail, but there's others that are more exciting. But, you know, I got to check it all out and see what works when and everything. And I did have a real pretty spot to sit and have lunch overlooking the lake and stuff.
the fall color is gone though, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it was just early October that it was here and it disappeared pretty quick. You know, maybe we had a couple weeks of fall color and then it snowed and everything was gone. But the snow all melted.
Yeah.
That's
It's
where
supposed
Bill
maybe
moved to,
snow
isn't
again
it?
on Friday.
Didn't Bill move to Pueblo?
Yeah.
So you know him.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're planning to go hiking tomorrow out near Canyon City.
Have you guys gotten in a Sierra Club group out there yet?
There is a Sierra Club group, but because of COVID, they're not meeting or really doing anything. And they're not doing the Zoom stuff. So the only Sierra Club things I'm doing are more of the national stuff. Like right now, I'm working on writing letters to Georgia voters.
Oh, I am too. I am too.
Well, what they need is somebody like yourself that knows how to do Zoom meetings, Martha.
I
don't
don't know how to do Zoom meetings. I know how to join one, but I have no idea how to set one up.
Oh, it's easy to learn. You can learn with a free account. You can hold relatively short meetings with a free account.
Uh-huh.
What is it, 40 minutes, Chris?
I think so.
40 minutes for free.
Oh, okay.
What's
I did
Bill's
join
wife?
their Facebook group.
What's Bill's wife's name?
Sue.
Sue.
Yeah.
I bet Sue knows how to do a Zoom meeting.
Probably, yeah.
I do. I do. My children taught me. Whenever I have questions, I go to my children.
Right. That's a good looking dude. Oh, that guy. He's not so good looking. where is everybody? Arthur, I hope he shows up tonight. So Martha,
Yeah,
Sue works at that Pueblo Zoo, right?
Yes.
Have you been to that zoo?
Not yet. I'm waiting till COVID is over and
Yeah.
I've had a vaccine. I really try to limit my activities that are, well,
Put you in touch with people.
yeah, anything that might be indoors or I did go to the grocery store this morning. I set the alarm and got up at 6 and went to the store before breakfast and everything. Just trying to limit exposure. And I do have some KN95 masks, the Chinese version of an N95 that aren't really approved here, but they're better than the other kinds of masks. And really, it's probably better than Texas here in terms of people that do wear masks, but you find a few that are belligerent and mostly elderly people. They're the worst in terms of belligerence that I've noticed. Yeah, the most vulnerable are the most belligerent.
Well, maybe that's natural selection at work.
It's just that how did these people ever get to be elderly if they're like that? But, well,
Luck.
yeah, luck.
Oh,
Let's see. Who is?
so I want to know, his microphone is not on, but Greg True, looks like he might be
Yep.
camping. Are you?
Oh, hi, I'm still Greg.
out there in the
No,
dark?
I'm walking on the sidewalks. I want to live through my food, which means I take a stroll after dinner. And I usually have the headlight on up here, but and people think I'm a space alien or something walking down the middle of the street. So go figure.
Nice.
I'm just
That's
here
a
for
nice
the
way to
food.
have a meeting.
Yeah,
Get
it's
your
serene.
exercise, then you get the meeting.
Yeah, that's okay. Because when I get back to the house, I've got 2 more Zoom chats to work on, and it's like, okay, which one do I go for? It's all good.
I guess no one has seen somebody standing up exercising in front of their screen during a Zoom meeting yet, or have you?
Okay, well, congratulations. You got one now.
Well, yeah, but you're walking. That's different from just doing exercises in front of a screen.
You're thinking of the crazy exercises you did. But you know, one can turn off their camera. One does not have to display what one is doing. I've had so many people because I run a Sunday school Zoom meeting and I do what several other attend other meetings. And there's so many people who don't know that they can turn off the camera. And so they'll drape a scarf over the camera, or they'll aim it at the ceiling. And, you know, they're just afraid to let people see either themselves or their house at this point.
We don't mention another meeting that we were in, unfortunate camera, did we?
No.
Fuad, you're on. Hi.
Mm.
Who?
But he's still connecting.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Fuad Jabber. John, maybe if you could go back to the the agenda so I can see what I'm supposed to do. That would be good. The agenda, John, can you show the agenda?
We have a lot of people. Okay.
Because we're ready to go now. Where is it, John? Well, anyway, it's after 7 o'clock, so I think we will convene this meeting. Welcome everybody to the monthly meeting every second Tuesday of the month of the Dallas group of the Sierra Club. And I guess I'm not going to get the agenda. What's next, John? Can you tell me? You don't know? Okay, well, now somebody had an announcement they wanted to make before we get going. Who was that? I forgot.
Mhm. It's Susan.
Susan, you
Yeah.
can make your announcement now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make everyone aware that the Sierra Club is having a letter writing project to potentially Democratic voters in Georgia, supporting John Ossoff and Reverend Raphael Warnock, and reminding people that they have a second chance to influence the outcome of their elections. So let's see if I can give you, and this is very good for people who don't like phone banking. Okay, let me see if I can put it in right here.
You want to share the screen?
I'm giving you a chat right here.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's how you could connect to the project. And they're sending out letters till December 23rd. There's still a strong need to influence the outcome of the Georgia election.
Did everybody see that?
That'd be a good thing to put on our website.
Okay.
Yeah, and we could put it on the Facebook page as well.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be good. I just found out about this just coincidentally by email.
Did you get that that website to John? Because let's put that up on our Facebook page.
I put it in the chat.
Right, my chat disappeared rather quickly. Oh, wait a minute, there it is. I gotta click on it.
And there's another website for talking points for the part you write in yourself for the Georgia letters. I've got a link to that somewhere if I can find it.
Yes, they'll help you. They'll help you with the text.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Years, I didn't think he would actually show, okay? He showed up. He showed up at the time and he said, hey, why did you do that?
Somebody trying to say something?
Fresh peanut poppers and the one so fresh.
Who's speaking?
About an hour night in the back.
Okay, I guess somebody is talking and doesn't realize we're hearing it. All right, at this point, we are ready to move on to our committee reports. And this says we'll do, why don't we reverse this a little bit and go to Victoria? I know Victoria is here, and go to Victoria Howard for the report from the Conservation Eco Action Committee. Can
Hey
you do
everyone. Yes, hi, thank you, Dan, and hello everyone.
That
I
sounds
am
good.
so glad to hear you and see you. Conservation Eco Action is really moving forward with some exciting work. I am always open and available to talk to anyone person to person that may have questions about what we're doing on our committee. But just a quick overview, we have a new Sierra Club student committee led by Sahan Yernan, who has 15 members from his high school in Capel. This is incredibly exciting. We're also making a lot of inroads with our work helping Garland with the lead contamination, so on and so forth. So a lot of neat things going on. And like I said, please feel free to reach out to me. My name and phone number and email are on our website, and I will fill you in on all of the details for anyone that wants to know.
Is that it, Victoria?
That is the highlights. There's a lot more, but I won't take the whole time talking. So yes, for
Well,
now.
Well, you could say something else if you wanted to.
Okay.
Now.
Well, one thing that we really would love to add on our committee is we're looking for neighborhood liaisons in different parts of the DFW Metroplex that would be open to joining the committee and kind of being our eyes and ears on the ground. It wouldn't involve a lot of work, mostly just checking your city council agendas, kind of watching social media and seeing what environmental issues are coming up. If any of you know anyone, or if you yourselves are interested, we would love to include you with the committee. Part of the hurdles that we're trying to overcome is just kind of trying to have a better idea of all the issues going on in the Metroplex, and the Metroplex is so large, it's hard to, keep our fingers in everything. So that would be helpful. And Dan, that is all I have for now.
Okay, well, Victoria, I can do that for Addison.
Wonderful.
They send out a summary of everything that goes on at the town council meetings.
That would be
And,
wonderful.
I get that. So I know what's going on in Addison. So I will be your man in Addison.
You're my man in Addison. I love it. Thank you.
Okay. I don't suppose Ginger Bradley has checked in yet, or has she? Ginger Bradley, calling Ginger Bradley. No. I don't imagine David Griggs has signed in yet. He usually comes a little bit later. Liz, are you here?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Yay. Hi, everyone.
We're going to go to you now.
Okay. And I can do outings and ICO.
Okay.
ICO being Inspiring Connections Outdoors, which is our outreach program for those that may not know. And welcome to everyone. The outings program, like an ICO, like all the other committees, are currently under a mandate from National to not gather because of COVID. So while we're thinking of things and trying to, kind of be hopeful for the future, we are not able to have any activities at least until the end of February. So for anybody interested, we want to hold your interest. We encourage you to sign up if you haven't already for the Outings monthly newsletter. It's an e-news, just one a month, so we don't blast you with anything. But in addition to what's listed on the outings page, which isn't anything right now, but you would at least get notified as things progress. And you're also welcome to send me a direct email if you're interested in the outreach program. I'll be looking forward to and hoping to maybe work with the kids in the spring. Obviously, that's kind of all up in the air right now, but we're hopeful. We are looking forward to being in the outdoors, as everyone is. But just understand we haven't lost interest. We're just currently under a mandate to not gather, just like our committees cannot gather and anybody. But hold that thought, take your own walks safely. We encourage you to do that. And if you have any questions about outings or the outreach program, my name, email, and phone number, everything is on the club website, and I'd be happy to chat with you.
Okay,
And
thanks,
I'll just throw
Liz.
this out, a shameless plug, but as you're doing things, thinking of honoring anyone with Christmas presents or little gifts, our outreach program is not able to do any outings right now with the kids, but we are still having to pay and maintain the costs associated with it as regarding gear and storage. So there's always a need, and if anyone would feel so inclined to want to give a few dollars, just contact me and I can let you know how you can do that, either directly, which would be not tax deductible, or through our foundation account, which would be tax deductible. And it would be greatly appreciated.
All right, thanks, Liz.
Thank you.
I don't imagine that David Griggs has signed in yet, has he? No? And Ginger, not here, right? Okay, John, can you make this meeting agenda go forward? Because I think at this point we would be ready to go to our speaker for the night. And is that correct? I guess the agenda doesn't go any further than what you had there. Is that right, John? Okay. At this point, let's go to our program. So I'm going to ask you, Victoria, to introduce our speaker for the evening. Tell us a little bit about him, or he can tell us if he wishes, and we'll proceed with tonight's program.
Yes, we are so excited. I'm going to let Dr. Jabbar talk about himself because I think he'll do much more justice to his work than I will. But we are so very excited to have the good doctor on with us tonight. He has been patient. I actually scheduled him to talk back in January or February of this year. And so he has been so lovely and so patient to keep us on the calendar this long through all the craziness of COVID. So Dr. Jabbar, thank you so much for being here. I hand the floor to you, and we look forward to your presentation tonight.
Good, thank you. You can all hear me well, right?
Yes.
So I'll introduce myself. This is the greatest thing, yes, because usually people ask me to write something and they read it, but it's still me doing it, right? So my name is Fouad Jaber. I am a professor and extension specialist with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. I am a faculty here at the Dallas Center, which has this new fancy building. If you've passed by it, it's on Coit Road, just south a little bit of George Bush. I am a water resources engineer. I'm affiliated with the Biological and Agricultural Engineering Department of Texas A&M. I don't teach. I give mostly lectures like the one I'm doing today, and I do research. I do have graduate students that do all kinds of research and publish all kinds of papers, and I'm actually going to talk a little bit about at least one project that one of my graduate students did a few years ago. I'm going to share my screen. Let me see here. Can I share my screen? Yes. Okay, let's just shows you guys. Can you see my screen now, my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I'm not going to put it in presentation mode simply because it's coming to another screen, and it's making it difficult for me to see. Can you guys see it, or do you want me to increase its size a little bit? Here, we can do this.
It's good.
Okay, very good. So I am a water resources specialist. As I said, I specialize in urban water resources, and I do not work like civil engineers on water supply. It's not my business to design water supply networks in the city. This is a civil engineers work. My specialty is really protecting natural water resources, looking at cleaning rivers, reducing the pollution from urban systems into rivers and lakes. And as a result, my focus is really something called green infrastructure. And basically, these are nature-based practices that you integrate into an urban environment that can capture pollution on its way toward the rivers and keep it in the ground and get it actually treated by plants and the soil. And we're going to talk about those a little bit more in detail in a second. Another thing that I do that I might not address a lot today is I do what we call natural stream restoration. I look at ways to restore streams that are in bad shape, that are eroding badly, that are becoming deeper and deeper with time, into restoring them into a non-eroding system, so a stable system, but also an ecologically functioning system. So with that, I'm going to start my presentation. So we're going to talk today about stormwater green infrastructure. There's other names for this. Most people call it green stormwater infrastructure, GSI. Some people call it blue-green infrastructure. Some people call it low-impact design. We're going to talk about why is it needed, how do you design it, and then I'm going to share results from research I did that shows that it is really beneficial at small scale as well as at larger scales. So let's start with the rationale. Why do we need green stormwater infrastructure, right? Why do we need to manage stormwater? Stormwater, there are two natural terms. Storm, it's a storm, something that happens due to fall of rainfall. And water is a natural system, so stormwater is natural. Why do we need to manage it? We need to manage it because of how humans have modified the landscape. Humans converted natural landscape like the one we have on the left to these more urbanized landscape with houses, less trees, small grass rather than deep high grass. And as a result, they changed the hydrology, how the water cycle that we all know about. Instead of water falling, infiltrating into the ground, most of it traveling under the ground, whether it goes all the way to the groundwater or it travels just in that topsoil root zone area. The amount of water that gets held back in small depressions behind rocks, on the trees, all that, when we cut trees and convert the land from pervious, meaning the land that allows for infiltration, to impervious, what we're doing is we're reducing infiltration and we're forcing most of the water that falls from the rain into running over on the land. What that does is it reduces the capacity of the soil and plants to capture a lot of these pollutants. So when water infiltrated in the image on the left, that water, it took with it decaying leaves, dead animals. All those could be natural sources of pollution. But then by infiltrating, either the soil particles would capture some of these pollutants and keep them in place, or convert them to a less pollutant form, or some of these become nutrients to the vegetation and the plants. The second thing that happens in these natural environments is by forcing all the water to flow underground, it slows down the water. Water, when it's flowing underground, it has to fight the air particles trapped in all these pores in the soil. So there's a maximum speed that water can travel in the soil, which results in if we get a rainfall today, you might see water seeping out from soil, on the side of a road or next to a river, days or sometimes weeks after, because it slowly seeps out because soil is preventing that water from flowing fast. When we prevent that water from infiltrating and make it flow above the ground, like the image on the right, what happens is the majority of that water runs off on the ground. It runs very fast. We have now stormwater system that capture that water, force it into pipe, and send it as fast as possible to the nearest river or lake. And so what's happening is now that river that stabilized and got used to flow, to water coming slowly to it after a storm over 1 or 2 weeks, is getting all that amount and even more of it, because none of that water is being held by the soil at the within an hour or two, and that is a big cause of erosion. Not only the impervious zones, even the lawn, your lawn, it's green, it's wonderful, it's probably capturing some carbon, it is allowing for some infiltration, but remember, when your house was constructed, that ground was completely compacted by the big machines that build your house, and then the developer usually, or the builder, comes back with 4 inches of soil and then puts sod on it that is regularly mowed, so it does not allow for that root system to develop and become big and capture a lot of water. So even lawns can produce 1 or 2 times more runoff than natural system where there's deep rooted grasses and vegetation like prairie and trees. So that's what's happening in the hydrologic cycle as a result of human interference. So here's an example of when it rains. Not only it takes with it pollutants that are typically, decaying leaves or animals. There's actually, we're digging out soil, and these soil particles are the same ones that when they were in the ground have been capturing pollutants for years and years. It's like, if a land used to be a farmland and people used to spray certain pesticides or add a lot of nutrients to it, a majority of these pollutants were trapped by the soil particles. Phosphorus is a good example. A lot of the pesticides, they get trapped on soil particles. When we do construction, we dig out those soils and then we pile that soil on the side of a construction site, allow that soil to go with the water to the river, and we're transferring pollutants that our grandfathers had sprayed on the land right now into rivers. Actually, there's a good example here in the city of Dallas. For a while, and it's not anymore, but for a while, the Trinity River was considered polluted because it had a high concentration of a pesticide called chlordane. Chlordane was the highest level of chlordane ever recorded in the Trinity River, and actually in White Rock Lake was in 2008. In White Rock Lake, it did not exceed safety level, but in the Trinity River, it did, downtown Dallas. In 2008 was the highest amount ever measured. That pollutant was banned and not sold anymore in 1981. No one has used chlordane unless you were stacking it somewhere since 1981. And the highest ever recorded concentration of chlordane in the Trinity River was in 2008. Why is that? Again, because the highest building activity happened in the Dallas area and upper areas. The Trinity takes water all the way from McKinney and from Denton and all these areas. A majority of the construction activity was happening between 1981 and 2008. A lot of that soil that actually had trapped that chlordane throughout the years was allowed to go as sediments in the water, and it polluted the river. So these are called legacy pollutants, and that's an example why we need to reduce sediments from going to the river with runoff also. Oil, hydrocarbons, all our cars, if you ever sit in a parking lot in Target or Walmart or any of these large parking lots and it's raining, look at the water flowing in that parking lot. It always have that film of oil on top of it. And that eventually ends up, and in small creeks after a rain event or during a rain event, you can always see some that multicolor film of hydrocarbon flowing on top of these creeks. And so that's another problem right there of urbanization. And I mentioned this a little bit, but as we said, based on historic rain events and how water infiltrates in the ground is how rivers form. The riverbed forms as a result of how much water comes into it after repetitive storm. Usually, actually, they've measured that ball-shaped part of a river. The river usually is the whole width of what it says here, floodplain. But that ball-shaped part of the river, they measured it in hundreds and hundreds of rivers, and it always came back to being able to hold the flow from a storm that happens every 1.5 to 2 years. So in Dallas here, it can hold probably the 2.2 inch storm. And why is that? It's because the storms that are 2.2 inches and less, when they flow to the river with and a lot of the soil absorbs the rainfall, that's the amount that ends in the river is not erosive. So it just creates a channel for itself and flows in it calmly. Bigger storms, when you get 3 inches, 4 inches, then much more water will come in because the soil cannot absorb as much. And so what happens in time, the river creates these floodplains that are designed to spread the flow over a wider area, and as a result, slowing down and actually result in less erosion. That's how rivers form. When we urbanize, when we start putting houses in the floodplain, what happens is a majority of that water is not infiltrating anymore. And the water that's ending up in the river is not arriving over 2 weeks, as we said. It's happening the next day or the next hour sometimes. And as a result, we have a very fast flow coming from that 1.52 year event, and it causes erosion. And in addition, because you've reduced the space in for where water can go, your floodplain limit actually rises also. And now some of the houses that you've built become within the flooding zone and can flood more often. So you cause the flooding, and then you cause problems for yourself by increasing that floodplain limit as a result. So final problem is that nutrients, specifically, you're talking about nitrogen and phosphorus. They, in most of our areas, our streams end up stopping at a lake, man-made lake. Like if you look at the East Fork of the Trinity, it goes to Lake Lavon, it goes to Lake Ray Hubbard, and then there's Cedar Creek. There's a lot of little lakes on the way. And by putting lakes, what you're doing is you're allowing that river to concentrate the pollutants, the nutrients that come with it. And so at some point when you have a certain concentration of nutrient exceeded in a lake, you get an algae growth. Like sometimes it's overnight, sometimes it takes 2, 3, 4 days. You might see some algae forming on the edges, but then one day, if you don't restrict nutrient flow into these lakes, you result in an algae growth. The problem with algae in lakes is that it has a short lifespan, and when it dies off, it actually uses dissolved oxygen in the water. So the growth of algae in your lake results in a reduction of oxygen in the water. And when oxygen is reduced, what do you get? You get fish kills. And these are happening more and more in Dallas lakes. This is here Lake Granbury, which is southwest of Fort Worth. And this occurs, according to people there, a few times a year in some corners of the lake. So what's the solution? As I mentioned, it's what we're calling green stormwater infrastructure. It's also called low impact development. It is a way to capture some of the runoff and with its pollutants and force it to infiltrate on site. We're recommending, advertising, telling everyone that mostly developers, builders, that there are ways you can reduce pollution from construction, from the conversion of pervious land to impervious land, to something that produces less runoff and less pollutant concentration without losing a lot of usable space. And so that's what green stormwater infrastructure. The idea is that you can integrate those into the development without necessarily losing space. So developers won't be concerned that they will have to build one less house or reduce the size of a store for any reason. And the examples are rain gardens, or we call them bioretention areas, permeable parking spaces, and I'll talk about those in details, green roofs, and rainwater harvesting. These are the most prominent examples of that green stormwater infrastructure concept. So let's start with rain gardens. Rain gardens also are, they're known in certain environments as bioretention areas. And so what is it? It's basically a depression that you build. You make a depression wherever your runoff is usually leaving your property. Let's say runoff is coming from this house right here. It flows out and used to flow directly to the street. So what these people did, they made a depression right here. So now when water comes in, it flows into the rain garden. Some water gets stuck here. There's vegetation that's going to actually use that water. Of course, it's specifically chosen vegetation that can handle water logging for a while. Some of the nutrients in that, the pollutants in that water are going to be broken down either from the plant roots, even from the soil. It can be captured by the soil. It can be broken down by the bacteria in the soil. It can be absorbed by the trees. It can be immobilized by the organic matter in the mulch that you put there, or it can even be broken down by the soil. So there's all kinds of ways pollutants can be reduced, and the amount of water that's captured in that depression, that water is never going to go to the street anymore. It can only infiltrate. Only the extra water, which usually is cleaner because the first few the first inch or inch and a half of water is the one that carries most of the pollutant that were sitting right there waiting for it. The next 2 inch are going to be cleaner. So those can overflow and it's less of a problem. There's a couple of design of rain gardens. There's one that you can do in your own house, and it's basically a small depression that you can have, you can do yourself. You can hire one of the neighborhood teenagers. Now I heard there's a Sierra Club student group. You can get them engaged in digging green rain gardens in your backyards. Now, but basically, it's supposed to be something that a homeowner can do by himself or with the minimal help. You just dig a depression of 6 to 8 feet on wherever if you had a natural depression in your yard that's been ponding, you can use that. Or if you can see your runoff from your house going in a certain direction, maybe it's starting to form a small channel causing some erosion, you can put that rain garden there. And then you plant it. We have a list of rain garden plants. You can put mulch on the bottom, because mulch is helpful, reduces evaporation, and as it breaks down, it becomes organic matter, so it helps the plant survive longer. You can put mulch at the bottom of these 6-8 inches and plant it, and here you go. You have a rain garden, and people won't even know that this is a stormwater practice. They will just think that you decided to do a beautiful depression full of flowers, and they will just think that it's part of your landscape. But you deep inside will know that it's a secret stormwater management practice. The other type of rain garden is more a professional one. It's more like a system that you can put in parking lots, in medians of roads. These need construction, they need design. They usually have a perforated pipe in them that helps them drain the water more efficiently. And so these are called bioretention. Those usually, we dig down 3 feet deep and replace the native soil that usually is compacted and does not allow infiltration with high infiltration types of soil. Usually it's a mix of sand and yard waste compost. And then we plant plants in it. So it works the same thing as the residential rain garden, but in addition, you have 2 to 3 feet of soil underneath the plant that can also store additional water. And so that's an additional benefit of these bioretention. These can be built in medians. You can see these roads. There's a concrete here, but this is not a curb. This is the same level as the road. You can see the road is sloped toward the median, unlike typical roads that are high in the middle, half of which slopes in toward the median, half of it slopes toward the outside, so it can go, and both usually end up in a overflow structure, a concrete manhole, and as a result, it can it would go straight to a stormwater system, straight to the river. Now, what happens when it rains? Flow comes from the streets and goes into these plants, and it infiltrates in the soil until enough rain comes up and it starts ponding. And at the end here, it's not very clear. There is a structure that would allow any extra water. If we get more than the capacity of the rain garden, it would overflow then into the stormwater system. But what we did is we removed all the runoff from the first inch or 2 inches of rainfall, and we only would have runoff when we get storms that are larger than 2 inches. And usually those happen very rarely. That's actually around the 1 year storm. So it happened, the 2-inch storm on average, statistically, happens once a year or less in the Dallas area. So we would have overflow once a year or less in this case. This is again, you're going to see some of those because we're not showing in presentation mode, but this is a typical cross-section of a bioretention. And basically, as I mentioned, we dig down 3 feet, remove that soil, and replace it with high infiltration soil made of sand and yard waste compost. Usually the bottom has gravels, and in clay soils like we have here, we usually put a perforated pipe that will help drain some of that bioretention in case we get much more, we get several rainfall event days in a row. We want that water, at least that rainfall, to be filtrated, even if it flows out and is not necessarily retained. Let's go to that next one. That's fine. This is a design of a bioretention that's built here at the Dallas Center. Unfortunately, with COVID, we can't do that, but maybe next year, if you guys are interested, we could do this lecture as at the center here, and I can show you a lot of the construction that we did. But basically, this is the parking lot. Water runs off. There's a forebay here of rocks that makes sedimentation, and then the water flows into the rain garden. And this is the cross section of the rain garden. It goes in and fills the soil up all the way up to until it reaches this overflow structure, and then it overflows and goes to a detention pond that we have at the site. Let's see here. I'm going to show you a little bit of the results that I got. I monitored this bioretention for around 2 years. And so here's what we got. We were able to reduce the runoff over a 2-year period by around 50%. So the green on top is the rainfall events we got from April 2013 to January to actually it goes all the way to April 2015. You can see the different rainfall events. The blue is the water that coming into the rain garden, which means that this would have been the amount of water that would have left the parking lot into the City of Dallas stormwater system. And the red is the runoff that actually left the rain garden. So the difference between the blue and the red is what we were able to capture on site. And on average, so basically of the whole runoff, we have been able to keep 49% of the runoff that left our parking lot and force it to infiltrate or evaporate. Only 51% of that runoff went into the City of Dallas stormwater system. Water quality-wise, we measured nitrate, and we found out that we were able to reduce nitrate by 70%. So 70% less mass of nitrate left the property. Phosphate, 95%. Orthophosphate is the reactive phosphorus, which is the one that's most pollutant, really. We were able to reduce it by 95% from the site. And finally, sediments. And I mentioned that sediments could be carriers of all kinds of pollutants like earlier. And that's actually the main pollutant that we find coming out of parking lots. We were able to reduce that pollutant by 90%. So 90% of the sediments did not leave the system. And we also measured E. coli, which is a bacteria which is currently the cause of the impairment of pollution of the Trinity River. It's not anymore high for chlordane. That fizzled away by itself because it matched the use and the non-use of chlordane. But E. coli is currently what exceeds health level in the Trinity River in Dallas, and we were able to show that our bioretention reduced E. coli by 64%. So again, a very effective system to reduce pollutant. That's the rain garden that I measured. You can see water comes from the parking lot. There's a forebay here that slows down the water so we don't get a lot of erosion at the inflow, and in the process captures some of the sediments and then water comes in here. It goes immediately infiltrates because we have this high infiltration engineered soil. It fills up the 3 feet of soil and then starts ponding. And then we have a manhole here that is around a foot above the ground. And then when the water gets to that level, it overflows into the manhole and goes to the detention pond. And that's what we showed our results from in the previous shows. So that's one of the green stormwater infrastructures. The other practice of green stormwater infrastructure is porous pavement. So what is porous pavement? Basically, porous pavement is a material that you can still use to build parking lots or sidewalks or anything that you think about, and that is usually done with concrete or asphalt. But it's a material that have pores in it, so water infiltrates through it. So now, even though you're able to use as a parking lot, it does not produce more runoff because it makes water infiltrate through it. It doesn't have vegetation in most cases. There are certain material, and I'll show you a couple, that do allow for grass, but in general, it's made of a variation of asphalt or concrete. What is the water quality treatment in that? The water quality treatment is that you're forcing water to infiltrate and reducing the amount of runoff, and as a result, you reduce the amount of pollutant that can be transported to other location from it. Some of it allow grass, some of it can be asphalt or concrete. So here are some pictures. This is porous asphalt. As you can see, it looks very similar to regular asphalt. Porous concrete does not look like regular concrete. It looks more like this Rice Krispie made of gravel, and it's porous, and mainly because this is how regular concrete looks under the smooth top in your parking lot. When you look at a smooth parking lot, it's usually under it there's concrete with rocks, and then the top is smooth so that car can park on it. But smoothing is one of the main reason why water cannot infiltrate through it. Paver blocks right here, these are similar to any paver blocks you've seen, except that they have small teeth on the edge. So when you put two of the bricks together, no matter, they will always have a constant space of probably a 1/4 inch in between them that we usually fill with pea gravel. And so when it rains, water infiltrates through these slots right here between the pavers and infiltrates down to the ground. There's 2 types that you can use to put grass on our parking space. One, we can use these honeycomb plastic systems. You usually bury them in the ground 1.5 inches or so, and then you sod them. And eventually they completely are covered with grass, and you cannot see that plastic honeycomb system. But what it is basically that honeycomb system will provide the structural support so you can park a car on it without having getting stuck in mud or actually killing the grasses. but at the same time, it allows for grass to grow in it. The other system that's common here in the Dallas area is an expanded shale mix. Expanded shale is something that you can buy actually in all feed stores, which is it's sold as a soil amendment. It's basically a porous, very lightweight rock. So when you mix that with sand, it actually provides the same structural support for cars that you can find in here in that honeycomb system. And as a result, without actually a plastic system, you can park your car on it, and it has high infiltration rates. So it's a porous pavement also. We built a permeable pavement system here at the Dallas Center. There were 52 parking spaces, and we measured data from 25 of these. Here's a design of it. We had porous concrete here. We had pavers here. We had a grass paver here. We had a honeycomb system like the previous picture, but filled with gravel here. And then we had the regular concrete, and we compared the runoff that left these 5 spaces. We measured it here at the outflow, and we compared it to the 4 other types of permeable pavement and collected our data. This is how the design was. We had each 5 spots separated by a wall that went deep, so that they're hydraulically separated, so we can do our experiment. And there was a porous pipe underneath each parking space that all connected with a main that flowed out. And these represent the equipment we used to measure the flow and the water quality. This is a cross section of porous concrete. Porous concrete and porous pavers, are not just the material that you put on top of a soil. You actually have to have a gravel system underneath so that it can hold the water as it infiltrates, and so that it can infiltrate later slowly into the ground. And so we have 6 inches of porous concrete and 8 inches of gravels underneath, and that's what we used in our parking lot. And here are some of the results. Again, rain events on the top, and then the runoff coming out was at the bottom, where we had the control, or basically the regular concrete in black, and the 3 other types of porous concrete: grass pavers, interlocking concrete pavers, gravel pavers, and porous concrete in the other colors. And you can clearly see that way less than half of the runoff left in most cases after each of the storm. Actually, the numbers are shown here. There's a reduction rate in runoff was for the permeable interlocking pavers 71%, 74% for pervious concrete, 78% for grass pavers, and 93% for gravel pavers. But if and on average, it was somewhere between 70 and 90% of the runoff stayed in the parking lot, did not leave the parking lot. We also looked at how much total suspended solids, which is actually sediments, were retained on site. And again, it was in 48, 57% for the non-vegetated systems. And then, of course, the grass paver, because it has some type of soil, sand mostly, it was able to retain even a higher amount of the total suspended solid on site. So very highly successful in sediment reduction. I'm not showing nutrients here like nitrogen and phosphorus, because again, these are not natural systems. Only natural systems with plants and soil can treat nitrate and phosphate. So in this case, the nitrogen and phosphorus were not different from the regular concrete and the pervious material. That's why, but it was good reducing sediment, which does carry most of the system. This is the interlocking concrete paver, a closer look. You can see how there's a space in between the parking spaces, and water would infiltrate in those. You can also see that you can use bricks to actually make the lines. So these are part of the pavers that make all the lines between the parking spots. The third thing I want to talk about is green roofs. Green roofs is basically growing plants on the top of your system. Now, not every structure can handle a green roof, depending on how it's designed. But soil and plants, especially if it rains and they're wet, they can be very heavy. Actually, a foot, let's say a cubic foot of soil with plants that is wet weighs exactly as much as a cubic foot of concrete. So if you go to your house right now and say, I want to put a green roof, chances are your foundation will not be able to hold it. But a lot of the downtown buildings, the large buildings, concrete buildings that are built, they definitely can handle extra weight already because it's designed within them for that reason. So you can put green roofs on those. Green roofs don't also need to be only on buildings. They can be on overpasses. Actually, the city of Dallas did a green roof in downtown Dallas. It's called the Clyde Warren Park. It was a park that was built on top of a concrete overpass, and it's vegetated. They did a lot more things. There's play equipment, there's restaurants, all kinds of stuff, but it's actually functionally a green roof. Grasses growing on top of concrete. So that park, even if you can go play on it, but it actually is reducing the amount of runoff that is falling on that overpass too. We had an experimental setup to measure the amount of water that green roof reduces. And so we were comparing, this is the experimental setup. You can see each one of these systems was divided into 4 sections to test different depths of soil. And we collected the runoff from these separately into barrels underneath. And then we collected samples and measured them. The difference between the 4 here, they're divided into 4. We had one did not have any, it was a typical roof. So this was our control. This is what we compared the results to. Then we had one system with 1 foot of soil, one system with 10 inches of soil, and this plastic drainage system that is supposed to help hold water more. And then we had the commercial type of a green roof that came with several layers. It had roof membranes and root barriers and insulations and that same drainage layer, and only 4 inches of soil. So we wanted to see how these 3 different designs would perform. And here's what we found is that the 1 foot, the commercial type with 4 inches and several layers reduced runoff by 65%. The soil, the 1 foot of soil reduced it by 76%, and the soil and that drainage layer reduced it by 75%. So overall, just 70% maybe is a good number to represent all of these. Green roofs can reduce runoff from your roof going into the system by around 70%. Finally, rainwater harvesting, that's a little bit different than the other practices. I call the other practices passive best management practices, passive green infrastructure, meaning that you build it and it does its job. Rainwater harvesting is actually an active stormwater best management practice. That's what BMP stands for right here, best management practice. So it's a green infrastructure. Why is it an active? It's because if you put a rain tank off your roof, it rains, it fills up. If you don't use that water, that's it. It becomes a waterfall. Water will come in and overflow immediately, and it's not a BMP anymore. On the other hand, if you do use it for irrigation or even just empty it when you know a storm is coming, then it will do its job and capture the runoff that comes out of your roof when it's actually raining. So we did a small experiment here. Again, we built 4 small roofs and created a small lawn for them. And we compared the performance of systems with rainwater harvesting to ones without rainwater harvesting. It was a 10% model. Basically, the roof was around 100 square feet. So it's like you're connecting from a downspout that captures water from 1,000 square foot roof. The 3 rain barrels captured around 150 gallons. So that as a 10%, that's like putting a 1,500 gallon tank off your roof. And then the yard was around, it was 15 by 10, so it was around 150 square feet. And so that's representing you watering a lawn of 1,500 square feet. So it's a 10% model that we built. We built for in order to have replications, so we can have good data. And this is what we found. We found that, and these numbers are actually in liters and for the barrel. So this is for the 10%, but you can multiply by 10. But basically think of this as a 1,500 gallon. The 833 liter, it's not equivalent to 1,500 gallon, but because it's a 10% model, that's what it represents. We were able, on average, and we modeled it for different soils from our clay soil, and found out that on average, a 1,500 gallon rainwater harvesting system, if you're using the water regularly to irrigate, can reduce the runoff from your property by around 50%. A 1,000 gallon can reduce it by around 40, also to 50. And as you go smaller, you will get less reduction. But even a small 500 gallon tank can reduce your runoff by around 20 to 25%. In addition, you get water savings that are around, if in clay soils it was wet, which is ours, we had savings in water that was around 50% for our system. So very beneficial if you have a rainwater harvesting system that you use regularly to irrigate your lawn or your flower beds, because unknowingly you will also be reducing runoff and improving making impervious areas, urban areas, imitate nature more. That's what we're doing, right? In all these, we capture the runoff and force it to infiltrate like it would have done anyway if it was a natural system. So that's the goal. The last thing I want to talk about is wetlands. And so what are wetlands? Wetlands are natural wetlands. You probably are familiar with natural wetlands. They talk a lot about those coastal wetlands that can help with hurricanes. These are naturally existing areas, but we actually have taken ideas from these natural wetlands and we designed them as a stormwater management system these days. And so we call these constructed wetlands, and they're basically similar to a rain garden, except that they're shallow and they're designed to at least partially be wet most of the time. And they are very effective also in reducing pollution. Here you go. Here's a typical design of a wetland. Usually you make an area flat. You have your inlet, runoff coming from the parking lot. You make a few deep areas, and these deep areas, they're 2 to 3 feet deep, and they are usually wet most of the year, and they allow a lot of the critters and some of the vegetation to survive year long in those systems. The light blue system is it looks like a channel, but it's actually a flat area, so there's no flow. It fills up like a bathtub and empties like a bathtub. And that part is designed to be wet for maybe a week after a storm event. And the green part is the part that gets wet during a storm event and stay wet for around 24 to 72 hours, depending on how you design your outlet. And so it stays wet. The dark green is the part that in general stays dry unless you get a Hurricane Harvey kind of storm. This is data that shows also that wetlands, we didn't do any, we've built a couple of wetlands, but we never got funding to monitor them. So I got this from the literature, and you can see that wetlands can be very effective in reducing a lot of the pollutants also. Just a fast example of how these small scale, everything I talked about is your house, a large store, maybe our research center here, how putting a system like that can reduce runoff from that location. But my graduate student, Mijin, who's now in Korea, she took that data and she applied it at a large scale development in actually the Houston area. And she wanted to see how the impact is if every a house in a development puts a rainwater harvesting system, and then we convert all the medians of the road in that development into a bioretention, and the parking lot of the shopping center that's part of that development is permeable pavement. What happens? And so here's what we're going to look at. So the thing that she did for her PhD, she compared different levels of density, basically a downtown area, very densely urbanized area, high number of population per unit, compared to a more typical single home development. And so here you have, oops, here's the high density, the residential. We have the high density, medium density, and then we had one called medium density conservational. Basically, it's townhomes with the open areas being green. And so we're going to look at the results that she found out right here. This is the high density, as you can see, and we were able to occupy a specific number of people. I can't remember how much. Let's say 2,000 people. We were able to fit them in that part of the property, and then we gave them a strip mall on the side right here. When we went into single home, that same number of people had to fill this much more people. Has much more space, you see, compared to this space. When if you were living in, we're all living in big buildings, in like 4-floor buildings with maybe 20 apartments at the building. This is the area we would occupy. If we go into single homes, this is the area we would occupy. The medium conservational, still per square foot, acre, the same number of people, but the houses are tighter together, and then we have more green spaces in between that you can fit as a result. But again, it's the same space as the medium density, but it's actually has a lot more green spaces within it. That's the difference. Let's see now the result of, oops, I deleted that result. Let me check it out. I'm going to open another presentation since I mistakenly deleted this one. Here you go. Very good. Let me go here. Hey, here's the results. Okay. Can you guys see them? I'm going to make them bigger a little bit so we can see. Basically, when comparing the flow right here, it showed that in the high density development, we were able to reduce the flow. So we got naturally much less flow than we got in the medium density. So without green infrastructure, the high density, because we occupied a much smaller area and left the others natural, only 374 millimeters of runoff left the high density, while the medium density, that's the single home houses, they had significantly higher runoff coming out of them, right? And so that's counterintuitive, but in reality, if you put 1,000 people in a smaller area, even if that area is completely urbanized, looks like a concrete jungle, you are actually allowing for greater green area on the edges. So as a result, less runoff comes out from this total property. Now, when we did apply green infrastructure to the system, they actually became comparable. So even single homes with green infrastructure basically has runoff that is comparable to the high density with green infrastructure. So basically green infrastructure, if you're gonna put green infrastructure, then you're fine going medium density or high density. But if you're not gonna put green infrastructure, you need to increase the density of your property and have larger open areas in your system. With regard to nitrate, we had kind of similar results. So already the nitrate was lower in the high density compared to the medium density and medium conservational, but LID was not as effective in making them equal. It made them less different, but the high density was still more effective with reducing nitrogen when we had LID than the medium density and the medium density conservational with LID. finally, phosphorus was in the opposite story, really. In phosphorus, there wasn't an obvious benefit to the high density. They were already more or less in the same range. And then when we applied BMPs in the medium density systems, BMPs were much more effective and reduced the phosphorus by 22 and 25%, while the LIDs in the high density were only able to reduce phosphorus by 11%. So basically, there are, there's benefits for all types of designs at large scale. This is a large area that's really as big as a watershed in some cases. That was very beneficial to the system. With that, I'm going to stop. I guess I'm not sure if you guys have time for questions. Just mention here that a lot of the funding of the research I mentioned here came from EPA and TCEQ. AgriLife Research, who I work for, actually paid for part of that money. And Texas Seas Grant, which is a NOAA branch here at Texas A&M, also provided some funding for the modeling study. And this is here my information. And I am open to question, or if you guys think there's no time, I'm happy to just listen to the rest of the meeting.
We have plenty of time, so does anyone want to ask Dr. Jabber some questions on this presentation?
I do. This is Dick Gouldy. Hi, Fuad. I'm glad to hear your talk after visiting with you on some of the hikes.
There you go.
It occurred to me, you talked about some lead remediation. And one of the projects that we're working on with a group in Garland is helping to figure out what can be done to remediate a very high lead concentration in water and in soil that's drained out of industrial waste that has accumulated for 60 years.
Wow.
And it's basically coming from retention ponds that have not been completely washed out, and from a creek, a couple of creeks that have overflowed during floods, and build up debris in the bottom of the creek.
Mm-hmm.
Could some of your techniques help reduce that amount of lead?
Usually, when something is so it's a heavy metal, lead. So it we'll have to check the ability for vegetation to survive in these systems. But if it's in very high concentration due to years of accumulation, and it's probably well entrenched in the soil, and really usually the only remediation that I've seen for a system like this is like similar to I don't know, these PCBs and stuff like that. These are the only remediation is really the removal of that soil and getting rid of it. There's probably I haven't seen a lot, and then again, I'm not a specific expert in bioremediation, so I'm not sure if there are plants that specifically can target lead that you can maybe take that soil and grow these plants on, and then take these plants and put them in a landfill or do something with so that they don't contaminate other locations. But this system really is planned for typical low level type of pollutant, not industrial. So one of the things that could come up to your mind is like you're capturing all these sediments. Wouldn't that rain garden fill up completely? Well, the answer is like, no. The amount of sediments that could be a pollution for a river that comes with storm water, you would not even notice. You wouldn't even care about. Like, it barely shows in a sample of water. It would be like a minuscule amount, but it's still a source of pollution. It carries with it E. coli, and these accumulate, but it's small concentration. That's why these systems that you can put in your backyard or in the median of the parking lot at your work, they work because they can constantly take care of small amounts of pollution. So a little bit of nitrogen coming with the water can be captured by the plant. But if we dump a ton of nitrogen in that parking lot and water runs it over to the rain garden, it will actually burn the plants. Industrial pollution are kind of that other system. There might be bioremediation system for, so but I guess they would still have to be dug out and then treated separately because it's so toxic also on another site. And maybe there are plants that can take care of it, but not these systems. These are aimed at these typical daily pollutants that historically, that if there wasn't a parking lot, the soil would have taken care of them. And now we're providing soil in places that people had put medians, elevated medians that didn't do anything. They had plants, but when it rained on them, actually water went from the median to the parking lot and added to the runoff. And now we're like, why don't you make these medians a receptacle for the runoff? And now here's the soil where usually these pollutions get treated, and here it is in your parking lot. So that's really the aim. Industrial stuff, a little bit more complex. I could look into it though. Let's talk, and I could do some research and see if there's anything we can specifically do to target that specific area that you're looking for.
Well, there's a big need. If you can come up with anything, I'm sure the Garland City Council people would be really pleased.
Sure.
As would the citizens who have to live there and are getting sick.
That's right. That's right. No, we'll look into it. I'd be interested to see if there's a natural approaches to remediation.
Dr. Jabber, if you will look in our chat room, you'll see that several questions have been submitted that way.
Okay. Let's see here. Chat. So one is more of a comment is, what about these large square foot warehouses that produce a lot of runoff and cause problems down the line? Yes, any of these systems would work, really. If you think about them, they're different layers. If these systems can handle green roofs, and a structural engineer should check on that, then a green roof is a solution. If it can't, as that runoff comes out from the downspout, put a 10,000 gallon tank collecting water from these and use them to water the medians of this parking lot. If it's if the tank is not big enough or they don't have anyone to operate it, put rain gardens in the medians for your parking lot, make it permeable pavement. So that we can have several layers of treatment, from green roof to the rainwater harvesting tank, to the permeable pavement in the parking material, to rain gardens in the medians of that parking. And that area would let out runoff as much as it did before humans came to this land. Are there specific types of vegetation that are better for pollutant capture? In reality, well, if you're looking at industrial treatment, like Chris was mentioning, is that there's people who look into that there are certain vegetations that can accumulate certain toxic heavy metals without dying more beneficially. For rain gardens, though, we don't care, again, because our target pollutants are nitrogen, phosphorus, breaking down some hydrocarbons, reducing the amount of bacteria coming in. And any plant can do that. Now, the limitation in rain gardens is that the plants need to be able to sit in complete waterlogged condition for at least 3 to 4 days. And at the same time, we don't want to create a new space that the landowner needs to water on a regular basis. So they need to be able to withstand Texas August 100-degree weather for 100 days. That's what we need. We need a plant that can live in water for a full week and can live without a drop of water in 100-degree weather for more than a week. How is that possible, you might say? Well, it is possible because we live in the famous Blackland Prairie of Texas. And the Blackland Prairie of Texas was always made of clay that has very low infiltration. And there were these famous prairie potholes all across. There are still some if you travel along the south, and some are being revived in some areas like in Houston. And basically these were natural depression in that clay, where water was when it rained a lot, there was very little infiltration, and plants still grew there. They grew there and they stayed there. And then the summers were probably as hot a few hundred years ago, 600, 700 years ago, or even more. And these plants also survive. These are, therefore, they're native facultative wetland plants. Basically, if you go to the USDA website or look for a USDA vegetation guide, they classify wetland plants as wetland obligate, wetland facultative, and upland obligate. Basically, a wetland obligate means it's a plant that needs water all the time. That's not a good plant for our rain garden. Upland obligate, it's a plant that cannot handle water. That's again not a good plant for our rain gardens. Wetland facultative, which means a plant that can survive both in water and in dry land. These are our best option. If you Google Texas A&M AgriLife rain garden plant list, you will find the site where somebody took my list and published it, and it has a lot of these plants. If for some reason you can't find it when you Google it, email me, and the email is right there, still showing, right? Or did I? Yeah, it's f-jabber@tamu.edu, and I will be more than happy to email it to you, or tell you which website it is. Let's see another question. Helen wants to know if could the nitrogen and phosphorus number we saw in the modeling study be explained by activities of the residents. People in single-family homes may do things like washing cars, chemicals on turf, etc., that the high-density residents don't do. That is a very good question. The actual answer is, while in real life it is possible, this was a modeling study. So basically, we created the landscape in a computer. We said, this is how much nitrogen there was on the ground on day one, and we created a computerized rainfall, and we only analyzed the impact of impervious land and pervious land and vegetated versus non-vegetated land on the results. So what we saw as a result in my modeling study is only the impact of the difference between how the design of the houses was. Now, if we were collecting samples at the outlet of that development and comparing them, then we could go back and say, well, nitrogen is really much higher in these than those, and say, well, that's probably because the single home residents are, cutting their grasses and not taking care of the clippings, or they're washing their cars on their lawn, on the grass, or something like that, or even on the concrete. So there are factors, but these results, since it's a modeling study, they're really just trying to analyze the difference between two types of landscapes, one with a lot of concrete in an area and a lot of grass in another, and another with concrete distributed everywhere and fewer people living per square foot in that site.
Are there any other? I think that's it for the chat room, isn't it, Dr. Jabber?
I have actually one that was sent, I think, unintentionally, privately.
Okay.
It says stream erosion as a result of stormwater systems. So this is a good point. This is a this addresses. So when you go to a stream here in Dallas, actually, and you look at where you have these stormwater inflows, and it actually causes amazing damage. We actually, when I do a restoration project, I go to a site and like a city comes, let's say McKinney asked me to come and look at the stream and see how they can fix it. As I look at it, when I see stormwater pipes coming in, then I actually divide the project into 2 sections and do a full analysis upstream from that pipe and another full analysis downstream from that pipe, because the additional runoff coming from a completely different watershed changes completely the hydrology of the stream downstream. And surely enough, right where that pipe is, you get that water goes usually straight into the opposite bank and causes it to erode and changes the whole system. And these are sometimes triggers for an erosion thing that will just keep going downstream as a result. And so we usually deal with those by finding ways to actually change the form of the channel downstream of the pipe so it like can handle that flow more. You know, there's a lot of calculations that go into that, such that you can change the channel to accommodate the extra flow resulting from urbanization, but at the same time keeping it in a natural cross-section form such that it can be stable for a long time and encourage riparian vegetation. So that's what we usually do. And the second thing we do is we put structure that divert the water toward the center of the stream and prevent that water from hitting the opposite bank directly and causing erosion at that site. We should maybe next year we'll plan a stream restoration talk that will address a lot of these issues right there. And here we have also John is saying that Madden Prairie has prairie potholes that I spoke of. Where is Madden Prairie?
John can't talk to you because
He's typing.
he's typing it in.
I don't know where Madden Prairie is. I'd like to go see them actually if they're close. Northeast Collin County. Ah, something to look for. Maybe that should be a Sierra Club field trip, looking for the Madden Prairie potholes.
Okay, does anyone else have a question for Dr. Jabber before we close this part of the meeting? Nobody? Well, thank you very much for a very informative presentation, Dr. Jabber. That's a lot of work that talk represents, and as Dick suggested, it's very, very highly needed in this urban area.
Yes, absolutely. And we're trying, as I said, hopefully COVID will end up and I get a chance to show some of you some of these practices that we built here at the Dallas AgriLife Center and a few other areas around, you know, things to look at, keep an eye on. If you ever go to Deep Ellum, the city of Dallas built rain gardens on the corner of Deep Ellum. So these are functioning rain gardens. There's a few areas here that have them. The Tarrant Regional Water District, their campus is full of these practices. So yeah, now that you know about them, keep an eye, and hopefully you can encourage the adoption of these more and more when you get the chance to talk about them.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Jabber.
Thank you.
The last thing we'll do is see if anybody has come in late that needs to make an announcement, such as David Griggs or Ginger Bradley, or anybody else that wants to say something before we close this meeting. Do I hear any takers on that? Okay, well, with that ends tonight's meeting, and I hope you'll all return on the second Tuesday of next month. We'll have another excellent program. So thank you all for coming, and thank you, John, for hosting the meeting again. John is making a...
Thank you, Dr.
What is that supposed to mean, John? Huh? He's wanting me to show you a movie.
The next program is a documentary. That's what John is trying to
Oh,
tell you. But Bruce,
next month, you go ahead, Victoria.
No, just to tease January. Dr. Jabber, first of all, thank you so much for coming. I absolutely love your presentation, like really, really. And we will be having you back next year. I will be in contact with you for sure. But yes, to tease next month, our first program of 2021, Bruce Melton, we're going to have a screening of his award-winning documentary. So I will put things out on Facebook with some information about that, but plan on attending. It's January the 12th, 2021. So we look forward to seeing you all in the new year.
Okay, and Victoria, let's not forget to put that letter writing Colorado, or that Georgia letter writing campaign up on our Facebook account. And
She put the information. Did Susan put it up here?
yeah,
Yes,
she did.
I've got it. I've
Got
got
it?
it. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, I think we can bring this meeting to a close. Thanks, everybody, for attending. And as I say, come back next month. And thanks to John.
Thank you, everyone.
Even though he can't talk. Actually, I kind of like that. No, just kidding. Good night, everybody.